The argument in beverage world is always, well, you build top line as quick as you can and distribution. And the hope is that one day a Coke or a Pepsi or a Nestle will come and buy you up. And you basically get rid of all of the things that are holding you down from being profitable as soon as you get sold. I always immediately assume if private equity takes over, the quality is going down. Basically, these guys come in and just maximize margin.
Yeah, that is true. But I do think that there are a lot of businesses that are being built on hype or like more fads than are genuinely sustainable businesses. And I think that if you have a fad that's doing really well, you have about 12 or 18 months to figure out how to turn that fad into a sustainable business before you lose the momentum that you'll be able to do it. Nick, you and I always talk about 3PLs and our poor experience with them. I want to talk about one that people are having a really good experience with. It's called Red Stag Fulfillment. It's owned and operated by e-commerce entrepreneurs. They're spectacular. They have 3 guarantees: 0 shrink, 0 mispacks, 0 missed shipments. In 2024, year to date, they have 99.993% accuracy across inbound inventory, order accuracy, and on-time shipping. That's 99.993%. That actually blows my mind. If you want to learn more, go to redstag.com/limited. Once again, that's redstag.com/limited. All right, Nick, season 8, episode 4, a bunch of stuff to discuss today. I feel like we haven't done a podcast in a couple weeks now. So I feel like a bunch has happened. Here's what I got on the agenda. Here, I'd love to tell you what I don't think you've heard any of this, or I haven't shared this document with you, so it's going to be new to you too. Awesome. One is a brand called Own Protein Shakes got sold. Did you see that? OWYN?
I did see that.
Okay, we're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about some other beverage brands, including Prime and Olipop, and maybe Stanley. Stanley's not really a beverage brand, but it's in the thirst category. I want to talk about some social media stuff, in particular TikTok and Facebook. Some out-of-the-box marketing ideas that I've seen recently. And if we have time, I want to go over a business idea that I have that I hope somebody starts, because I don't have the time to start it myself. But let's start at the top.
Sounds like a fun episode.
Yeah, it's going to be great. Let's start at the top and talk about Own Protein Shakes. Do you know what OWN stands for? OWYN?
Man, if there was a multiple choice test and there was 4 options, I could pick the right one, but I can't remember exactly what it stands for right off the top of my head.
It stands for only what you need. And you know what it is, right? I'm sure you've had it, right? It's a plant-based protein shake that you mix up, and you know what, you've purchased it in the past and drank it in the past?
Yeah, I've seen it before. I've seen it. I haven't had one, but I've seen them all over the stores.
Really? You have not had one? That's surprising. Well, they're fantastic. I used to drink, it turns out that this year they're projected to do $120 million in revenue. I feel like I'm probably $3,000 of that $120 million. They're fantastic. I really like them. They were purchased by a company called Simply Food Groups. Okay. Simply Food Groups owns Atkins. You know Atkins, like that diet brand where it would be like your Atkins diet where you don't eat anything except like, you stop eating carbs and sugar for a really long time. Anyway, it's owned by Simply Food Group owns Atkins, and they also own Quest, like the Quest bar.
Oh, interesting.
So they bought OWN. It was doing, do you know what the purchase price was?
No. I would guess, probably,
exactly.
Was it around that 120 million?
No, it was a lot more.
Okay, tell me.
So they did 120 million in revenue, and they were sold for $280 million.
Oh, wow. More than I would have expected.
Yeah, and they did, that's a 13.3x multiple on their EBITDA.
Wow.
So it basically means they were doing $20-some million in EBITDA every year.
Wow. That's also pretty decent, right? It's not bad.
Yeah. I mean, like that sounds like $20 million in EBITDA for any business is a lot of income and a lot of cash flowing through you. That sounds fantastic. Like 20 million in EBITDA is great. 120 million in revenue is fantastic. I guess there were a few things that I thought about when I saw this. One is that that was less revenue than I would have imagined for a brand that I see everywhere. I see these guys at bodegas. I see these guys at Whole Foods. I see these guys are large on Amazon. It's just a smaller brand than I would have thought. I'm not saying that they've done anything poorly. I just see it in so many places that I just assumed they were doing more revenue than this. I also assumed that they were owned by a big CPG company already, but they weren't. So it's a little bit less revenue than I suspected. It's more EBITDA than I suspected. Like once I heard there was 120 million in revenue, I was like, okay, what's their EBITDA going to be like? Because usually a lot of these businesses haven't necessarily reached profitability at 100 million in revenue in the beverage space. It's really hard to reach profitability in the beverage space because it's so hard, so expensive to do distribution. Like Liquid Death, I'm virtually certain has not reached profitability. There was a lot of chat on Twitter and in a few other places that I go to that the purchase price was not that high. 13.3x EBITDA is not that large for a beverage brand. What do you think of that multiple?
Mm-hmm. I'm trying to think. I don't know that I would say like that's not that high. I think that's probably very fair. The argument in the beverage world is always, well, you build top line as quick as you can and distribution, and the hope is that one day a Coke or a Pepsi or a Nestle will come and buy you up, and they'll leverage their own trucks, their own merchandising, their own planograms, and you basically get rid of all of the things that are holding you down from being profitable as soon as you get sold. And so, like, even when I worked at Hint, the entire goal was always like, well, you keep building in a way where Coke and Pepsi can't. That way, when they come in, they flip their trucks on and their distributors on, and you don't, you lose or you save a lot of the money that you're currently paying out, but they want to pick you up with that distribution, already set. Or that really, I guess, like that brand awareness and like that sell through is what they're looking for.
That's really interesting for a few reasons. One is it doesn't sound like that's what these guys at OWN did. Like they had less revenue, but were profitable and materially profitable. Like $20 million in cash on an EBITDA basis is huge. And two, they didn't sell to Coke or Pepsi. They sold to a different group that probably doesn't have the distribution or reach that Coke and Pepsi do. And that's also really interesting because you're sort of like, one of the things I never enjoyed about the direct to consumer space, at least like 10 years ago, or maybe 7 years ago, was that it was always like you have to bet your company you have to bet your time and your company and your resources on the idea that you'll be able to continually fundraise in order to make the economics work out. And then, someone big will come and buy you. But if the, music stops and, 2 years later, you've been growing your business and focused on top line and not EBITDA, but now you need to fundraise and the market turns on you, well, now you've got no cash and no one's ready to put in more money. And so you're in a lot of trouble. So it sounds like the beverage brand, that's what people aim for, except OWN. It sounds like other people, maybe even Hint, was sort of aiming for, hey, let's focus on sell through and top line and distribution. We'll focus on profitability when we're acquired.
Yeah, okay, a couple thoughts. One, that's very interesting. And I think that because they did focus on profitability, they actually opened themselves up to a lot more ways to get out of the business versus just, this Hail Mary of Nestle's going to buy us and they have everything that we don't. So like that, that's going to be the Hail Mary. Have you seen, so Nestle, do you remember that, that brand Orgain?
Yeah.
And also Vital Proteins. Yep. They both sold to Nestle. And I can't remember who said this, but somebody told me that a big reason that Nestle bought both of them was that they own other protein brands and they could really optimize the cost of creating these powders. And so buying these businesses, they automatically add, maybe tens of percentage points because they own these factories and they can just optimize the production. So that also feels like it is a holding company model, but it doesn't necessarily feel like what this is, which is like three, I think, completely separate products under the same holding company. Another one that's interesting is there's a protein specific holding company I came across recently that Bain has a big stake in called 1440 Foods. Have you heard of that company?
No.
They own like a number of brands, but I think their three most well-known ones are Met RX, Body Fortress, and Pure Protein, which is also shakes. Um, and I'm not sure like what their efficiencies are because I think they're also a variety of SKUs. But interesting that they like choose to focus on the protein space. It seems like these guys are focusing on like wellness optimization to some level, given the weight loss piece and the powder and the protein bar.
It's always, I always like lose a little bit of my soul when I find out that like this brand that I love or cherish is owned by private equity or like Bain. I'm like, oh God. Like just a moment ago, I was reading about how Bazooka Gum is owned by Apex Partners and they make like Bazooka Gum and like Ring Pops. And I'm like, I grew up on Ring Pops and Push Pops. And like, now you're telling me that like, it's a financial, play and not a like a, children's happiness play. But I mean, I get it.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
I was going to say, I always immediately assume if private equity takes over, the quality is going down. If like, for example, it was Athletic Greens, I would assume the quality of the ingredients would be out the window because, basically these guys come in and just maximize margin.
Yeah, that is true. Well, let me ask you a couple other things about the food space then. Okay, so, OWN was purchased 280 million, 120 million in revenue. Okay, so more than 2x revenue and 13x EBITDA. Olipop, they did $200 million in revenue last year. They're doing $400 million in revenue this year. They're trying to raise at an $800 million valuation. Or at least that's what I've heard from an article that I read in The Information. It says trendy soda, the headline is trendy soda brand Olipop seeks fresh cash, targets $400 million in sales. And they're looking at a valuation of more than $800 million, it says in the article. Do you think that makes sense? Does that valuation make sense for a brand like Olipop?
I'm not sure because on one hand, it could just be that they are not as, like they're basically not operating at the same EBITDA margins as OWN was. And so maybe their multiplier gets them to that 800 because they're spending so much on growth and marketing and all that. But then the other thought was like, well, maybe if it's that a lot of their revenue comes from, direct to consumer or places that are not really like reliable revenue, maybe that's why it's a lower valuation. But I don't think that's the case. I think majority of their revenue is actually like wholesale and, everything.
I'd be shocked if it wasn't more than 80% was. Yeah, I'd be shocked if
I would say probably even 90.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, I'd put Amazon in that other. If I put Amazon in, I'd say maybe 20%. But yeah, otherwise, I'd say more than 90% is coming off Olipop. What I would say about Olipop, I read this article. What's hard to tell is if the fresh cash they need is to fund operations or it's secondary sales for like, existing investors and existing insiders who want to take some chips off the table. Like, maybe the Olipop founders and executive team want to sell 10% of their shares so that they can go and not worry about money. That I could understand. I'm a little like, if they need cash to run the business, I would say you're at a $400 million run rate. You're doing $30 million of sales per month, more than $30 million of sales per month, more than $1 million a day. Why do you, if it wasn't profitable, I would say, why is this brand not profitable yet? And I have no information that it isn't. You could be fundraising because you need cash to run your business. You could be fundraising because you're opportunistic or you're IPOing. You could be fundraising because you're doing secondary. So it could be any reason. But if it is primary capital that they're going to add onto their balance sheet, I would say, why do you need more cash? You're at a $30 million run rate per month, north of $30 million run rate per month. Why do you need cash to run a business that's as large as it is?
Yeah,
anyway, that's what
I would
thought
imagine
about Olipop.
a lot of it. Yeah, I'd imagine for them, a lot of it is going toward like end caps or special placement in fridges. Every time I go to LA, I feel like they also end up owning an entire fridge at some even not like an Erewhon, but like a normal grocery store.
Yeah, I get that. But like, you're doing $400 million in revenue per year. Like, what do you like? Let's say at best the brand can do $2 billion in revenue per year. Maybe you can do 50 billion. What do I know? But like in the next few years, you're not going to go from 400 million a year to 4 billion a year in like the next 2 years.
Yeah.
when do you become profitable? Like even to fund those end caps and placement fees, at some point you've got to become profitable. They might already be profitable. I'd be surprised if they were not actually at a $400 million run rate. If they're not profitable, I'd say, what does the end game look like? Why is this brand not making money? There's one other brand I want to talk about in the hydration space or in the beverage space, at least, called Prime. We've talked about them a few times recently on this podcast. In 2022, they did $250 million in sales. In 2023, I heard they did $1.2 billion in sales. They outsold Gatorade at Walmart. At Walmart, which is bananas. They were selling units of Prime for $1,500 on sites like eBay. What is that? What was that?
I don't know. It's like,
did you just see that thumbs up?
Okay. Have you seen that new update where if you put a thumbs up on your, like if you put yours higher, it'll just activate a thumbs up emoji on the Mac.
What? I've never
or on
seen
FaceTime.
That. Okay, great. I've never seen that, but all right. So Prime, it was selling units for $1,500 on sites like eBay. Now, supposedly it's being clearanced for something like 30 cents a bottle. The sales have fallen by 50% in Q1 2024 compared to Q1 2023. Have you heard of this? What happened to Prime?
It's a good question. I actually don't, I haven't heard any insider information about Prime. I've heard some outsider information in the sense of like people who are pretty well versed in the world of beverage, or kind of like the Illuminati of beverage, you could say. They predicted this. Not they. This one person predicted this last year, that Prime, like when they saw this previously, it was very similar to not a pump and dump, but it did extremely well for 2 years, and then or a year, maybe two, and then sort of just fell off. And almost as if like it rode a trend versus became something of a routine, or became something of a, kind of like in the standard diet or whatever. And I think that Prime, like when Prime was selling for $1,500 a bottle, it wasn't because of what was inside the bottle. It was because what the bottle meant as a symbol of culture, or being cool or trendy or whatever it was. And I think that they built that brand in a really strong way, but then I think they didn't necessarily think about the retention aspect to it. I also think like the brand went from not being available anywhere, huge marketing, to being available, in almost too many places. Where if you go into the average store now, like it's on discount, and they can't really get rid of it.
So let me ask you this. Were they building a Gatorade competitor, or were they building the next generation Supreme?
Oh, it's a good question. I think they were building, I think they thought they were building a Gatorade competitor, but they ended up building like a short-term Supreme. Like I don't know that Prime is still cool anymore as much as as much as like maybe some of the other brands that did a good job getting really loud and getting everywhere. I think they accidentally built this like drop model type product that is no longer seen as, as cool, basically.
Yeah. I had
What's your opinion on it?
I think you're right. I think I'm not sure if they thought they were building the next generation Gatorade, or the next generation, or like they knew what they had and that it was like a drop Supreme type model. But I do think that there are a lot of businesses that are being built on hype, and or like more fads that are genuinely sustainable businesses. I should say there's a lot more. I should say there are businesses that are fads and not genuinely sustainable businesses. And I think that if you have a fad that's doing really well, you have about 12 or 18 months to figure out how to turn that fad into a sustainable business before you lose the momentum that you'll be able to do anything with. And I think a good example of that is Last Crumb cookies, I think. Like Last Crumb was this amazing brand. I saw all these influencers posting about it and opening up these boxes of beautiful cookies. I ordered it. I was a VIP member. I'm not an investor, but I was, I spent thousands of
You'd
dollars
bought
on
that
Last Crumb.
$1,000 card, right? Like
Correct.
whatever
Yeah.
the VIP card was, membership.
That's right. I spent at least $4,000 with Last Crumb in my life, but I was like, and because it was a fad, and it was a fad that I was like, okay, I'm going to participate in this fad. But I think they had a certain period of time where they're like, how do we turn this into a non-fad, legitimate, strong business? And I think they didn't do that. And the way to have done that would to be like, okay, great. We make these amazing cookies and we ship them to your house and we're really fast at it. What about how do we sell cookies at brick and mortar stores? Like, can we capitalize on our fad to get shelf space and build a sustainable business that has turn at brick and mortar stores? How do we compete with Oreo? Because at some point we're going to have to do that. We can't realistically think we're going to drop a chocolate chip cookie or a new flavor of cookie every several weeks and have $75 million in sales every year. Like, it's a fad, and you've got 12 months, maybe 24 months to capitalize on it and to shift your thinking and to shift the business from being like, okay, we're really popular on Instagram, but what's going to happen 3 years from now or 2 years from now?
Yeah, man, that is so true. Like yeah, you're so right. There's so many brands that like they get on that hype train, but then they're not good at converting that into something that is long term. And I think one example that was popping into my head was Red Bull, because all Red Bull does is just try to create dope content. That's all they do.
Yeah.
Like their entire game from the beginning has been to create good content, and that worked really well for them initially because it set them apart from other people. Then it worked really well for them when everybody would, when it was like you rent or when the game was to get followers or to have an audience, they won there because their content was sick. So they built that audience. And now where the game doesn't, it doesn't matter if you have an audience or not, as long as you make good content, you are winning because that's what the platforms want. They're still winning in that game. And all they've done, and they've stayed relevant throughout all these years. Like they're actually, Red Bull's sales is greater than I think majority of all other energy drinks combined.
Yeah. I think, they turned what should have been a fad, I think, into a legitimate business and like a sustainable one. Because they say we're not a beverage company, we're a media company, actually. What do you think about Stanley quenchers? Like, Stanley has those mugs.
Yeah.
You see them everywhere. If you go to any Equinox or Soul Cycle or, if you're out in the street, like I bet right now, Aloe Yoga is open. I bet someone at Aloe Yoga is carrying it. Yeah. Someone Stanley quenchers are everywhere. And they've done a fantastic job of creating a business around that. Is that a fad, or that quencher was around for a long time and it wasn't the fad that it is today? Is that a fad, or is that a sustainable business?
It like matches all the patterns of a fad, but at the same time, I feel like they're on their like 4th or 5th year of continuous growth. And they've also it's also not a product you have to go out and grab like Prime is or Red Bull maybe. It is something that is now built into your daily routine. And I know a lot of people where they feel weird on the days they don't have their Simple Modern or their Stanley Quencher with them.
Yeah.
So I feel like they've successfully crossed over to that other side. They also did a really good job, like maybe not with us, but with a 40-year-old woman, like they built that brand really well. Kind of like Yeti or Patagonia in a way that I think, like, I was just thinking in my head, I feel like Prime also never felt like a legitimatized brand. It was always like, oh, Logan Paul and KSI, like they're YouTubers that I follow, so I want to go and get that bottle. But it was never like this legitimized brand that felt like, they've got their stake in the ground and, they're going to be like a household brand name. You know what I mean? Like Native, for example, feels like they've got that stake in the ground and very established brand. But Prime never felt like it was that established as a brand.
Well, I think that's fair, but I think that's true. But I would say that Prime started in 2022. They've been around for 2 years. Like, it's hard to establish a brand that has like that type of that maintains that type of hype in just 2 years. I guess it's hard to establish a brand that has so much growth in the first year. I mean, who does $250 million in sales year one and over $1 billion
Yeah.
in sales two? And is like, it's sustainable brand. That seems unsustainable by definition. Meanwhile, Stanley's been around for like, I don't know, a century. Yes, the Quencher is popular right now, but Stanley has been a brand that's been around for a really long time. I read this
Yeah.
thing that said that Stanley said, like, we, what did they say? They said, we've realized that when people are going out, what they do is they reach for their keys, their wallet, and their Stanley. And they think about that in their
Yeah.
head. They're like, do I have my keys? Do I have my wallet? Do I have my Stanley? And they're like, we've integrated ourselves in the day-to-day routine of people when they leave their house, which I thought was really interesting. There have been a couple of fads that I've been a part of that I also wanted to talk about, which is how I've like started to recognize this. Like, when I was growing up as a kid, my brother and I would sell Pogs. We'd play with Pogs, but then we'd also sell Pogs to people. Do you know what a Pog is? You might be too young for it.
No, I'm thinking
Okay,
of a
you should
different
look it up
Pog.
online. It's POG.
Okay.
It's like I don't even know how to describe it. It's basically like a piece of cardboard that's a circle, and you you play by risking them together and using a slammer to flip them. And there were like collectible Pokemon cards, except far less exciting and probably far less valuable back in like the late '90s and probably late '90s actually. And so, we would go to the flea market and buy a bunch of Pogs because someone was selling the Pogs and slammers there. And then we'd go to school and sell Pogs and slammers. And,
Nice.
that was
What
a
was your
fad.
margin?
I have no idea. I really don't remember, but there were like good Pogs that were like poisons. Like if they had like a skull and crossbones, it was a poison, and some would have an 8-ball. Those were called, 8-balls. And then some would have a poison 8-balls, and those were the best Pogs. But that was a fad, and I started realizing that. Then my parents owned gas stations, and I was like, okay, gas station is a very sustainable business, right? Like everyone needs gas all the time, and
Yeah.
people buy cigarettes all the time, and so like, okay, great, you should have a really sustainable business. Like cigarettes are fucking addicting. You should have a very sustainable business. And I realized
Sustainable built in.
yeah, the reality is that there were so many different fads at the time when we were running our gas station. It was stunning. Like there was a period of time where cigarettes were meant to be exported to like Europe, and so what they would do, like, and they would have like they would cost less because Philip Morris would sell them cheaper to somebody who was exporting them than a retailer in the United States. So what some smart people decided to do is they would say, okay, this is a container ship of Marlboro cigarettes meant for England. It's going to go out into international waters and then turn right back and come back into the United States. And we are going to have cheaper cigarettes than you would ordinarily buy at Kroger or Publix or CVS or Walgreens. And so, we started selling those cheaper cigarettes at our gas station because they were and we were selling them like there was no tomorrow. Like we'd sell $2,000 or $3,000 of Marlboro cigarettes every day as a result of being cheaper than everybody else because we had these gray market cigarettes. And then the law changed and you couldn't have gray market cigarettes anymore. And, that fad was over. And then you had to go find another fad. And that next fad would have been like, there was synthetic marijuana. So we'd sell like synthetic marijuana that was called K2. And then the police would say, that's now illegal. So that fad was over. So you had to go find another fad. I realized that there's a lot of businesses that are built on fads. A lot of businesses are fads. I think like Prime might be an example. I think Last Crumb might be an example. I think there's a lot of businesses that are sustainable but have fads built into them. But that they're at least sustainable long term. And then the holy grail is like Tide laundry detergent. Never nothing fad, just huge business, huge TAM, lasts forever. You need very little product innovation to be incredible. And so I think the bottom of the list is like businesses that are fads, and that's Last Crumb. I think that might be Prime. I think there's plenty of other examples we could probably think of there. I think the next business is you've had fads built into them, like my parents' gas stations. That hierarchy of businesses is the Tide laundry detergent.
So the highest one, you're basically in your head, you're thinking not only was it a great business from a margin and a cost standpoint, but also from a the fastest time to like market adoption, really, right? Like people just immediately jumped on it and then they stayed.
That's right. The stayed is the key part, because I think Prime can say everybody jumped on this and faster than like anyone would have imagined. The problem is no one's stayed. And I think Prime could have gotten people to stay for another year with more interesting product drops, with more interesting collaborations. I think they could have built, like, they could have had several more years of like trying to squeeze whatever juice was left in the Prime business, or trying to make it a real legitimate long-term sustainable business. I still think they probably have a little bit of time to do it, but I think that, like, the longer they wait, the more we all realize this was a hype and it'll be gone. We'll be buying Primes at TJ Maxx pretty soon.
Yeah. So I wonder, one, if like, I feel like I wonder what their new baseline is going to be. If they did 250 and then 1.2, like, is their new baseline like 200 million? Is it 300 million? I wonder what that's going to be.
Is it 600? Yeah.
Yeah. It might be something still ridiculous.
Yeah.
The other thought is, like, what typically happens in beverage is, online, it's like you have unlimited shelf space. In retail stores, there's limited shelf space, and you have these huge players that box people out. And this even happens, if you ever see a college that's got Aquafina in their school cafeteria, you can bet Pepsi has zero chance of being at the arena or at their basketball games. And these guys box people out. And when LaCroix got really big a few, like seven-ish years ago, Bubbly came out from Pepsi, and the whole goal of Bubbly, from my point of view, was basically like, let's flood our retail channels with the same product that's way cheaper. We'll make it just as cool, and we're going to get these guys out of the place. And you see it now with, like, recently there was a couple years ago, like, spiked hard seltzers, and you had White Claw and all these guys come out and sort of flood the market. And now you have these non-alc competitors jumping in, or like hard tea, like Loverboy. We had Kyle on the show. Loverboy is getting traction, and it's got some more competitors. And now High Noon just came out with their version of hard tea, or, White Claw just came out with their version of non-alc hard seltzer, which is just sparkling water. But I wonder what now that Prime has gotten to a level where it's obviously it's probably showing up in all of their meetings at these big, like, Gatorade and Pepsi, et cetera. What is Pepsi's response going to be, or Coke's response with Powerade going to be, to try to get more of that market share? Because now they know people definitely want these types of products. It's just like, how do you build a product that A, gets consumers back to your side, and B, is so, like, these guys have so much money. How much savings can they deploy to customers to drive Prime out of the store to where Prime is like, it doesn't even make sense to be in this chain, because these, Pepsi's basically giving their product for free.
Yeah, I think LaCroix is a great example of a business that was like, we were unclear for a long time. Is this a hype or is this a sustainable business? Because I think in like 2017, you saw LaCroix everywhere. In 2024, you never see it anymore. I do think Bubbly had something to do with it. I think by the way, Aquafina is a Pepsi brand, but yeah, I think Bubbly had a lot to do with it. But I think it also was just, they didn't realize that they had to build a more sustainable business once competitors walked in. White Claw has done an amazing job of doing that. Like, creating a category, obviously creating something that's more sustainable.
Nick, you and I always talk about our poor experience with 3PLs. I want to talk about a 3PL that people are actually having a great experience with. It's called a Red Stag Fulfillment. It's owned and operated by e-commerce entrepreneurs. It's not VC backed. And the crazy part is, they don't say yes to everybody like every other 3PL. They say no to most people. They won't work with you if you're an apparel company or a company with thousands of different SKUs. Their goal is to provide the best fulfillment experience for brands where Red Stag Fulfillment and you are a mutual fit, which is really amazing. They're backed by 3 performance guarantees, 0 shrink, 0 mispacks, 0 missed shipments. If they miss one of those guarantees, they fix it at no cost to you, and they pay you $50 per instance for the inconvenience. So if you're doing $1 million or $2 million a year, Red Stag Fulfillment's probably not for you. But if you're doing 3, 4, or 5, you should really reach out to them. You can go to redstag.com/limited to learn more.
Okay, let's move on past beverage, because I want to talk about a few other things. I want to talk about TikTok, TikTok shops in particular. So TikTok shops are starting to get harder for people. TikTok shops are taking a higher cut of your revenue. Last year, they were taking 2% of your revenue. Starting April 1st, it was at 6%. It's going to be at 8% in July. There's still some subsidies happening. TikTok pays for shipping on orders that are over $20, I think. But it definitely seems like it's harder to go viral. And the brands that like are going viral are sort of like, look, it's taking a lot more effort to do this. We have to see thousands of different influencers and affiliates in order to go viral. What do you feel like? Have you been seeing that as well with all of your clients, or is TikTok still where all the growth is at?
Yeah, basically what we've seen is that from a from a content standpoint, if the brand puts out content, it obviously has to feel like a pretty organic TikTok. But really, a lot of like TikTok Shop getting that going comes from not the brand. Like it comes from affiliates or from other creators that
Yeah.
are seeded. There's actually like now in the back of TikTok Shop's affiliate platform, you can now recruit whole agencies and groups. Basically like other agencies where you can be like, hey, I'm going to give you 40% affiliate Moiz, and you can decide. You have 300 people on your roster. You can decide out of 40 if you want to give them 10 or 20 or 30, and you keep 10 or 20. That's what I've heard is something that like really has helped on TikTok Shop. But I do think the whole game, from what I've seen, I've not like built TikTok Shop, but from what I've observed, it's basically a game of like, how do you get the right people to get their hands on the product, like the product, and talk about it in a way that feels organic to TikTok. It doesn't feel like a sales pitch too much, but enough to like get somebody to want to buy it.
Yeah, I think it's really hard. And I think it's harder and harder to go viral as more and more people are trying to compete for this space. And so it makes TikTok shops harder and harder. And I think that the reality is we don't see yes, TikTok charges a certain percentage of the cost as a result of your, as a result of their commission, but your affiliate also takes a huge portion. It's not like, okay, I just paid TikTok 4%. You also have to pay an affiliate in order to get that sale on TikTok. So I think it's really difficult. And I think it's going to get harder. Facebook is copying some of that. Right now I can link to, if I'm an affiliate of, native deodorant, I can go and link to a native deodorant product and get an affiliate commission. Facebook is building that functionality pretty soon where an influencer can link directly to your shop and get a link directly to your shop so that they can purchase through Facebook and it can all be tracked by Facebook. Like how many native deodorants did Moiz Ali sell through Facebook shop, will become apparent in the next 6 months.
Yeah. What I've seen is like the newer the brand is, the more you have to rely on the affiliate commission and really push people to try to get it jump started. But if you've got a brand that people recognize, like, if Native were to play this game, it would be so much easier for them because they're already established.
Yeah, that's a great point. And like,
it's kind of like, I was going to say, it's kind of like going after like affiliates, not your typical affiliates, but like kind of like affiliates with newsletters or affiliates that are, they have somewhat of a niche audience where they just want to focus on products that they know are going to have high sell through. They don't care if you're going to give them 50% of a brand that nobody's heard of. They would rather take 8% of Goalie or Native because they know that their audience is going to see the brand name and, they're going to have a better shot at selling.
Yeah. In fact, I think those early brands that are recruiting affiliates, they're not even recruiting affiliates to get customers. They're actually they don't know this, but they're actually recruiting affiliates to get more affiliates because other affiliates will be scrolling through the feed and see an affiliate talking about another brand and being like, oh, this brand is giving out an affiliate commission. I wonder how much it is and whether it's going well for them. So I think it's almost like building an MLM. You're actually recruiting affiliates to recruit affiliates at the very beginning, whether you know it or not.
Totally.
But I did want to talk about this other thing because I've mentioned this in the past. I just hadn't gotten concrete numbers about it in the past. So TikTok has this shops program in 2024. Their goal in the United States is to have about $17.5 billion in GMV on TikTok shops.
Wow.
Now I have no idea how accurate that. I have no idea how they're tracking to that goal. I don't know if they're going to hit 17.5 billion, if they're going to hit 10, or if they're going to hit 50. I've got no clue. But that was their goal. They said their goal was 17.5 billion in sales in the United States in 2024. What do you think Shopify's GMV is? Without looking it up, do you know what Shopify's GMV was last year?
I don't. I would imagine maybe around a few hundred billion.
Yeah, that's right. It's 235 billion. So
Okay, I was gonna guess
basically
300.
TikTok, yeah, that's pretty close. TikTok is saying, hey, look, we're going to do 7% of Shopify's GMV this year. Now, if you just extrapolate that and say, you know what, let's say Facebook is going to do some, like Facebook also has a shop, right? They're going to do, their Facebook is bigger than TikTok, but let's say it was the same number. Let's say it was just it was another $17 billion on Facebook's shop. Although I would have to guess Facebook shop is way bigger than TikTok shop. Let's say they're the same. We're talking about 14% of Shopify's GMV now being done on other platforms and those orders getting pumped into Shopify. How much longer before that gets to 25%? I mean, we might be close to 25% already, frankly, because Facebook shop is so much larger than TikTok shop. How much longer before it gets to, it's very clear that it's 25% of Shopify GMV is done off of Shopify. I don't think it's that much longer. And that's why I'm really bearish on Shopify stock. Not that I don't love Shopify, and frankly, I own Shopify stock, so I say I'm bearish, but I'm taking a long position on it. It doesn't make any sense. I'm not being a rational economic actor, but like, why do you think that's right? Is more and more revenue going to push to Facebook Shop and TikTok Shop, or do you think it'll rest with Shopify still?
I still think for at least the next few years, I think Shopify will still be dominant. I think like a lot of like smaller, like for example, I don't see a world that Estee Lauder is on TikTok Shop. Or like, they're like, hey, actually we don't need a site because we can rely on Facebook and TikTok. I still feel, or even like, Dior or like a lot of these just legacy brands, I feel like would be very hesitant to do that. But I do think, 17.5 billion is also like no joke. I think they would probably over index in some categories than others. Like, if you're buying Tupperware or chapstick, like you probably don't mind buying off TikTok Shop, or maybe just like lower cost, cheaper goods, things that I would imagine TikTok Shop is going to also just become a huge sales channel for factories, like direct factory to consumer.
Yeah.
But I would imagine a lot of like the brands would probably still try to get, try for as long as they could, as much to get people over to the site so they can still walk them through that, I don't know, brand story or brand journey.
So I guess I agree that I don't see Estee Lauder or Dior being like, hey, let's start a TikTok shop. But frankly, I'm not sure I see them saying I'm not sure I see Dior on Shopify either, frankly, although they might be for all I know. But think about Jones. So like I whenever I think about this, I think about Jones Road Beauty, and I'm like, what would these guys be doing? Bootstrap brand, family owned, big Shopify brand, tech savvy, trying new things. What would they do? And I'm like, if they were finding cheaper sales on Facebook Shop and TikTok Shop, I'm certain they would lean into it. There's also like a couple, Shein is launched a Shein. I don't know if it's Shein or Shein. Let's say it's Shein. Shein. Okay, great. They're trying to say, hey, look, we want to put beauty products on Shein. Poshmark is starting to do live shopping with other brands. Like, the way that it took off in China, it has not in the United States, but they're starting to do live shopping in the United States. I think more and more, I imagine that like the sales channels will get more, more segmented and more diffused. Like there will not be one sales channel anymore of Facebook ads. It'll be Facebook ads leading to your Shopify site. It'll be Facebook ads leading to your Facebook shop, TikTok ads leading to your TikTok shop, sales happening on Poshmark that are live, sales happening on Shein that are pumped into your system. So I think that there's going to be I've said this in the past. I still believe it. In fact, I believe it more than ever today. Shopify's destiny is to become Zapier in e-commerce. The hub with a bunch of spokes that go out to all of your channels, pumping in those orders back into the Shopify ecosystem.
Yeah, I can't say I fully disagree. I do think like every platform will end up, trying to own that checkout. Shopify also, I don't know if I think I mentioned, but Shopify, like Shop Pay, is now not just restricted to Shopify. Like Everlane now uses Shop Pay. And I think Facebook on Facebook, they're trying to integrate Shop Pay so that Facebook shops and Instagram shops can also leverage Shop Pay. So yeah, you might be right with like Shopify. Like for them, what's the difference? I guess they'd lose some margin if somebody checks out on Facebook using Shop Pay, but like they're still getting that checkout and they're still running it through Shop Pay. So what does it matter if they run it on a .com or Facebook shop?
I think that doesn't matter right now. I think the problem is 5 years from now, someone could say, okay, I've created an open source Shopify. I've created or I've created a Shopify competitor. Like right now, you can't create a Shopify competitor. The amazing part about Shopify is the network of apps that it has. It has so many different apps that that are supported in the ecosystem. You can't create a subscription app, a review app, and all of these other things. But if you're just creating an API center, but database where you're like, I've integrated with ShipStation, with Facebook, with TikTok, with Pinterest ads, with Klaviyo, I think then it becomes a little bit different. And I think their moat is eroded a little bit. So I think they do care, or I think they should care. In fact, I think they should care. I think they do care. I think that there's not much they can do about it, but I think they, other than things like Shop Pay, which are adding genuine network effects, like Shop Pay has genuine. Okay, let's move on to one other. Let's move on to another idea. I was recently locked out of my apartment, and I was like, the elevator wasn't working, and I didn't have the keys to use like the front door. I didn't have the keys to the door. I only had the keys to the elevator, and the elevator wasn't working. And so I was like, okay, I'm screwed. I cannot walk into my apartment. I need to like have a locksmith open up the front door. So I went on Google Maps and I put in locksmith, and there were 40 guys around me. And so I called up the first one, and he's like, okay, let me give you a call back in like 10 minutes. And it was a lead gen guy. I forgot what the company was called. It was called like Locksmith SOS. And he was a lead gen guy. And then I started looking at the other guys on Google Maps that said locksmith. And 25% of the locksmiths in my neighborhood were this lead gen guy. He had put 25 different locksmith locations on Google Maps in my neighborhood, which probably means he's done it everywhere. So when you call for an emergency for a locksmith, you're just going to call him because he's half the results on Google Maps. You don't even realize it. You're like, oh, he has so many stores, but in reality, they're fake stores. They don't exist. He's just dropped locations on Google Maps and said, okay, great, I'm a locksmith and this is my location. You call him, and then 20 locksmiths call you back and say, hey, I heard you're locked out. Can I come over? But he's just a lead gen, and he sells the lead right away. He's like, what's your address?
Wow.
Great, let me go sell the lead. And it's probably some guy sitting in Oklahoma City. It's probably some guy sitting in Oklahoma City who's like has 40 million locksmiths on Google Maps. You always call him, and he just sells the lead right away. And it doesn't cost him anything because it's a Google Map address. You're just looking at it on Google Maps because that's like what you're looking for, and you need a locksmith.
Yeah. So when you like clicked the listing, was it just no photos or no reviews, or like how did that work?
I think there were a few reviews, but yeah, there were no photos. And you're also like, this is a locksmith. What's he going to have a photo of? His fucking van?
Yeah, true.
What does he do?
Yeah.
It's not like I'm like, oh, it's a beautiful store. I really enjoy the ambiance. I'm like, get over here with some crowbar and open up the store. Like, I've been waiting here for 3 hours. Not that it's a locksmith's fault at all.
Yeah.
I'm frustrated. I've been waiting here for 3 hours. Like, get over here. And I realized it's lead gen, and I was like, wow, this is such a stunningly good idea.
That's basically Red Ventures for local blue-collar business.
Yes.
That's incredible.
Is exactly what it is. I wouldn't be surprised if it was owned by Red Ventures, but it is a really interesting way to get free leads just by having a ton of different locations on the internet. And, I was like, could anybody else do this? Like, if you were starting a tequila brand, I'd be like, and I looked at bar, I'd just be like, okay, Nick Sharma tequila everywhere. Like every 6 blocks, I'd have Nick Sharma tequila location. And it would just be, I just sell it at this bar. I don't know how you can get Google Maps to do this. Like, I don't know how this has been, how they hack the Google Maps system in order to put in so many locations, but it's really effective.
Yeah, you've basically just got to have an address where you can send a postcard, where you get a confirmation code that you put in on the Google Business or Google Maps side. Like for Sharma Brands, we just put, they send us a postcard, and then I put it in, and that's how they confirm that I'm at this address. So I wonder, like, he probably paid somebody like, hey, I'll give you $25 if I can send you a card.
Yeah, yeah. And I did that 5,000 times, which cost me a bunch of money, but I recruit it the first time someone calls that number.
Yeah. And like the average locksmith is not going to be able to compete with that either. They're going to have one listing. And
That's
this guy's entire game is no locks. He's like Airbnb basically.
Yeah, they're not going to be savvy enough to do this kind of and like, he now needs one guy running a phone center, or he needs one call center that can handle calls across the United States. You need,
Right.
You need a guy sitting there to handle just calls in your local neighborhood.
Yeah. Damn.
So it's really smart. Yeah. There's one other business that I thought of when I was thinking about this, a company called Outer Furniture. I don't know if you've ever heard of them. I thought this was also a really interesting idea, which is, they don't have showrooms the way Williams Sonoma or West Elm or Pottery Barn or Restoration Hardware do. So what they do is, like, let's say you buy Outer Furniture, you can get a discount, or like you can get something for free from them if you agree that other people who are considering the furniture can come by your place to take a look at it. They can sit in it. They can be like, is this like, basically you become the customers become the showroom. And I also thought that was really interesting. They're like, look, we're going to drop our, like, you can try out our furniture in your local area, not because we can afford to be in New York City or Dallas, Texas, or Oklahoma City, but because John in Oklahoma City has already bought Outer Furniture, and his backyard is now my showroom.
Yeah, I've seen that before. And I thought it was so fascinating because it's like UGC brought to life. Like, not only are you going to get to go and sit in it, but you're going to be able to see how it's styled in different homes if you go see multiple, but you're also going to get to, you're like, whoever bought it is going to be selling you on it while you're there. The whole time you're there, somebody's going to be selling you on why you should buy it.
And like, it's such a good sales experience because the person who is selling you on it is a customer, is a real human being, and you're in their house. Like, you're like, is this person just selling? No, this person sits on it. The only downside I can imagine is, like, is it really dirty? Like, do they do a good job of, like, taking care of it? Like, if you go to Restoration Hardware, everything is perfect. If you go to my parents had Outer Furniture, it looked terrible. They have never done anything to, like, keep it up. And so I think that's like a hard balance to do, but I thought it was a really interesting idea.
Yeah. Fascinating. Yeah. It would be a good, we should look that up in New York. I bet you'd only get to rich people because, like, who else would have outdoor furniture?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and be like, hey, I'm going to come over to, I want to take a look at your outdoor furniture, and come with, like, alcohol, like a stereo system.
Yeah, bring the party.
When you get, bring a party when you get to that guy's house. That'd be so funny. Anyway, I thought that was a really good idea. I've seen, like, I'm starting to see all these, like, clever marketing ideas. I'm like, oh, you guys are geniuses. Okay, let me move on to one other quick thing. We got to wrap up, so I'm going to finish it in like 20 seconds. I would love someone to build a timeline for a business. So I'd love to be like, this year I sent this email. This year I launched this new product. This day I launched this new product. This day we launched this new website option. Like, we updated our website to add this post-purchase pop-up, or we tested this conversion rate optimization thing. Because what always happens is you start thinking about, what did I do 6 months ago that increased my revenue a lot, or a year ago? Like, why is this April so much worse than last April? Or if you're looking at Amazon, you're like, why am I doing less revenue today than I was a year ago? It'd be great to be like, you know what? You ran out of product on this day. That's why your revenue dropped on Amazon. Oh, you launched an email in Klaviyo saying everyone go buy on Amazon today, or everyone go buy at Target today. I wish there was somebody who was building a timeline for a business. So not just like, I think it'd be helpful for M&A purposes. So someone could be like, what did you do on what dates and how did this business grow? But also from a operational standpoint, what did I do what was my Mother's Day sale last year? When did it launch? Did I A/B test anything that I should bring forward? What sales are performing better? 10% off or a free travel size? Like a timeline so I could be like, this happened on this day. This was the result. Or just something like, I launched a conversion rate optimization test 2 months ago. I thought it won. I changed everything, and now sales have fallen off of a cliff. Maybe I want to go back and revisit that conversion rate optimization test. So I think that I wish somebody would build a timeline for a business like that. Do you know of anything like that exists?
No, but like, it can't be that hard. I would imagine even something like Tydo. Like Tydo has all the pipes built out to connect to everything. And there's no reason why there couldn't be, if the application was set up in a way where it says, hey, if there's an email that goes out, you log that here. If there's a new test on IntelliGems, you log this here. If there's a new app that gets plugged in, like let's say you plug in heatmap.com, log that it was plugged in here so we know that was, something. And then,
Exactly.
yeah, the pipes have got to exist. This is I should pitch this to Taito. Maybe this is something they could build.
Right. Yeah. The pipes, I think the pipes do exist. Like, I met Taito or Triple Whale or somebody has access to my Facebook ads, my Klaviyo account, my conversion rate optimization that or there are some manual things that I could probably add on there, but someone has access to most of it and inventory levels as well. So it'd make a lot of sense and make my life a lot easier.
Yeah. That's actually a great idea. Somebody should definitely build that.
Yeah. I hope somebody does, and if they do, I want to be your first customer.
Okay, but how much?
Please don't contact me.
How much would you pay a month for that?
Probably a couple $100 a month.
Okay.
But what I would not like is someone says I'm charging you 0.5% of revenue. Then I'd be like, you and I are not.
Yeah. We will.
Whatever
never
anyone
be friends.
says. Or I think it was somebody put Motion app or something on Twitter. I think it was Cody actually, and he's like, "Oh, I love this app." I'm not sure if it was Motion or not. And he's like, "Oh, they charge too little." And I went to their website, and they're like, "Do you spend more than $100 on Facebook ads a day, or maybe it's $5,000 a month?" They're like, "Call us for pricing." And I was like, "Fuck you!" I was like, "That is the end of my relationship with this company." It ended that quickly.
Yeah, I love Motion. Have you used Motion? I fucking love that product.
I will never use them. I'll never be like, you want to call me? Just tell me the pricing. Okay. I'm gonna have them call me and be like, hey, call me and we'll set up a time to speak to then speak about a phone call. Let's have 5 phone calls to arrange a phone call. I want to talk to the CEO of your business. You call me and we'll talk about a day where we can talk about a day where we can talk about a day where we can talk about pricing. How about we all waste our fucking time? Just tell me your goddamn pricing. Put it on the fucking website. Anyway, tell me about Motion.
That is, no, that's fair. I was going to say, whenever I see the let's chat, I see it as an opportunity of all right, well, whatever the fuck you think your rate card pricing is, that doesn't exist anymore. I'm getting the discounted pricing. That is always my thought is oh, let's chat. Cool. Let's chat now. And I'm not paying rate card. That's for sure.
That's fair. I get that. And I appreciate where you're coming from that. I'm just give me a ball, give me a sense of what's going on here. Is this going to be stupidly expensive? Is this going to be reasonable? Where are we at here? And I think that let's chat on you're spending $5,000 a month is an outrageous thing to do. I wish the other thing I wish someone existed was a bot where I could go through and I could direct it towards Motion app and I could create 400 scheduled phone calls with them for the next 3 weeks and don't show up to any of them. Or I'd show up to all of them. I'll hire some guy to he'll be on the phone all the time with somebody, a Motion sales guy. Hey, I'm here for brand A. Let's negotiate.
They're like, I thought your name was Edgar 20 minutes ago.
That's right. Yes. Yeah. He won't even get off. He'll be like, I'm just kidding. We don't need to get off. We can be on this call for the next brand. I wish I could waste somebody's time like that the way they're wasting my time like that. It really grinds my gears. Okay. That's a wrap for this episode. I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to it. Can you give us a preview of what's going to be on the next one?
Yeah. So in the next one, we're going to talk a little bit about private label brands. We're going to talk about actually a TikTok brand that blew up and some of the CRO tricks that they have, as well as the TikTok shop CRO tricks. And then we're also going to talk about another brand that was built off the back of TikTok and really just social content and what I think, other brands could learn from that in order to generate some more sales.
Awesome. Okay, great. Looking forward to all of that. See you guys on episode 5 soon. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be back next time to cut through the noise in CPG, retail, and e-commerce.
And if you enjoyed this episode, then why not share it with a friend? And be sure to subscribe on whatever platform you listen to your podcasts on.